I'm staring at the DNA test results in my trembling hands, and I feel my entire world shatter in an instant. It says there's 0.0% chance that I am the biological father of my own son. My son. The little boy I've raised and loved for the past 10 years who calls me daddy and runs to me when he's scared at night. I can't breathe, my heart is hammering, and my vision is blurred with tears. How is this even possible? I read the line over and over, praying I misread it, that it's some horrible mistake. Just an hour ago, I was a happy husband and proud father planning a family outing, and now I don't even know who I am to my child. We bought these Ancestry DNA kits as a fun gift for the family, a silly way to learn about our heritage. I never expected to find anything except maybe some distant cousin or a surprise percentage of Scandinavian DNA. Instead, this kit just blew up my life. I had mailed off a swab from myself and from my son, excited to share the results with him. When the email notification came, I eagerly clicked it open. The site showed me my ancestry breakdown, some cool maps, and then under the DNA relatives section, it listed my cousins and distant kin. My son's name was conspicuously missing from the list. At first, I thought there must be an error. Or maybe I messed up activating the kit for him. My wife Rachel was sitting on the couch next to me, playfully nudging me. So are you finally going to accept you're part Irish? I remember forcing a laugh. I didn't tell her I couldn't see our son in my relatives. I didn't want to alarm her if it was just a mix-up. My hands had gone cold. I muttered something about the site probably needing time to update, and I quickly closed the laptop. All evening I tried to act normal, but my mind was racing and my stomach was in knots. Rachel noticed I was quiet and asked if I was okay. I lied and said I had a headache. I couldn't even look directly at her or my son because I was afraid my face would betray the whirlwind of panic inside me. That night, after everyone went to bed, I snuck out of our bedroom and grabbed the DNA kit instruction manual from the kitchen drawer. Could a mistake like this happen? Maybe I did something wrong with the samples. As quietly as I could, I opened the trash bin and dug out the kit's packaging to find the support number. I ended up on the phone with a 24-hour customer service line at midnight, whispering in the garage like I was doing something illicit. The representative told me the results are usually accurate, but if I had doubts, I could request a paternity confirmation test or retake the samples. By the time I hung up, my head was spinning. If this wasn't a mistake, then the only explanation was unthinkable. It would mean my wife, the woman I've loved since we were college freshmen, cheated on me around the time our son was conceived. I found myself shaking my head, refusing to believe it. Rachel and I have had our ups and downs, but I never imagined she could be unfaithful. I almost convinced myself I was being paranoid over nothing. But I needed to know the truth. I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I just ignored this. The next day I made an excuse about a work emergency and took the day off without telling Rachel. I drove straight to a private lab across town that does paternity testing. I remember my hands were slick on the steering wheel from sweat. In the waiting room there was a cheerful poster about father and amp, child DNA testing, for peace of mind. How ironic. I felt like I was going to throw up. They took a swab of my cheek and I handed over the sample I'd secretly collected from my son's toothbrush. I feel guilty even writing that. I swiped his toothbrush after breakfast like a thief, making silly faces to distract him so he wouldn't notice. The lab tech said results would take a couple of days. Those were the longest 2 days of my life. At home, I was a wreck trying to act normal. Each time I saw my boy, let's call him Ethan, with his big grin, showing me his latest Lego creation, or asking me to play catch, my heart would squeeze painfully. I kept wondering if I was even worthy to be his dad anymore, if I was living a lie. At one point, he sat on my lap as we watched cartoons, and I just hugged him so tight he wriggled, laughing, "Daddy, you're squishing me." I laughed too, but inside I was dying, thinking, what if? What if I'm not really your daddy? I had to lock myself in the bathroom to silently cry that day, the stress and guilt and fear hitting me all at once. Meanwhile, Rachel kept asking if I was feeling better and offering to make me tea or rub my shoulders. I flinched when she touched me. It's horrible, but part of me already felt betrayed just by that missing DNA match. I started looking at her differently, noticing how easily she was going about her day like everything was fine. I found myself scrutinizing every memory from around the time she got pregnant a decade ago. We were 26 and newly married then. I was working crazy hours as a junior architect, and she was teaching at the local elementary school. Did I miss something? She never indicated she was unhappy. We didn't have major fights. Our sex life was good, or so I thought. We had been trying for a baby and were thrilled when she got pregnant with Ethan. I remember her crying tears of joy when the pregnancy test turned positive. Now that memory felt tainted. By the second night, I was barely sleeping, just lying in bed listening to her breathe, wondering if I really knew my wife at all. On the outside, I must have looked calm. I didn't confront her because I still desperately hoped the lab would say it was all a big mistake. I was clinging to that hope to stay sane. Then the call came. I stepped out onto the porch when I saw the lab's number flash on my phone. I'll never forget the clinical, polite tone of the technician confirming that, yes, the alleged father me was not the biological father of the child. 0% probability. I think I thanked her in a weirdly calm way and ended the call. The sunlight was too bright. I felt dizzy. This was real. It's real. I must have stood on the porch for a long time, because Rachel came out, holding Ethan's hand, asking what I was doing out there and if everything was okay. I'm sure I looked strange. I remember my eyes were wet and my face probably white as a sheet. I couldn't hold it in anymore. My hands were shaking and I blurted out, "Everything is not okay, Rachel." My voice sounded alien, even to myself. I saw her face go from concerned to alarmed as she noticed my demeanor. I told our son gently, "Ethan, bud, why don't you go inside and play for a minute? Mommy and I need to talk." He looked back and forth between us. I must have never sent him away like that, with such a tone, because he actually looked scared. But he listened and went inside, casting anxious glances over his shoulder. As soon as the door closed, I turned to my wife and just said it. I got the results. The DNA results. For a second, her expression was blank, like she didn't process what I meant. So I spelled it out, my voice falling to a whisper. "It says I'm not Ethan's father." Rachel's eyes widened in what looked like genuine shock. Immediately, she shook her head and actually laughed. A short, disbelieving laugh. "What? That's crazy. Of course you're his father." She reached for my arm, but I pulled away. I was shaking all over. I half shouted, "I did a paternity test, Rachel. Don't lie to me. It says he's not mine. How could you—" My voice broke then. I couldn't even finish the sentence. How could she do this to me? To us? She went pale. I saw the realization hit her face, the way her mouth opened and closed without sound. She started saying, No, that can't be right. There has to be a mistake." But she wouldn't meet my eyes. She kept glancing toward the window, maybe checking if Ethan was listening. I pressed on, heart pounding out of my chest. "Is there someone else? Tell me the truth, Rachel. Tell me the truth." I could feel my anger rising with each word. She burst into tears, insisting it must be a mistake. I'd never seen her like that, rambling, panicked. She even said, "Those tests aren't 100%, you know? It's probably a lab error." I wanted so badly to believe her. I was on the brink of just dropping it and ordering another test when I noticed something. Rachel still wouldn't look me in the eye, and her hands were trembling worse than mine. That's when I knew. My wife, usually such a terrible liar that she can't even hide a surprise party, was lying to my face. I felt something inside me just snap. A mix of fury and heartbreak like I've never felt. I raised my voice louder than I ever have at her. "Stop. Just stop it. I know, Rachel. I have 2 different tests telling me the same thing. Please, for the love of God, just be honest now." I was practically pleading by the end, voice cracking, tears starting to run down my cheeks. Rachel collapsed onto the porch steps, sobbing into her hands. I stood there, numb and cold, waiting for her to say it. Finally, in a muffled voice I could barely hear, she said the words, "You're right. You're not his biological father." It felt like the ground opened up beneath me. Even though all the evidence pointed to it, hearing her actually confirm it made it painfully real. My knees felt weak and I sank down onto the porch bench heavily. I remember just staring at the wooden floorboards, my mind blank except for one word that kept thundering in my ears. How? I must have asked it out loud. Because she started talking, her voice small and broken. She said it happened only once. That he meant nothing. That it was a mistake, a horrible mistake. She was speaking through sobs, trying to catch her breath. I just sat there, silent, letting her spill everything. She told me that about 11 years ago, around the time we were trying to conceive, I had been absorbed in a big project at work. I was working long hours, many weekends. She said she felt lonely and stressed about not getting pregnant right away. We had been trying for a few months with no success at first. She went out one night with some girlfriends, and an old college friend of ours, Jake, happened to be in town and joined them. Jake has been my best friend since college. He even introduced me to Rachel back in the day. At this point, when she mentioned Jake's name, I think I already knew what she was going to say, but I was still praying I was wrong. She and Jake had too much to drink. She said one thing led to another, and she ended up sleeping with him. Just once. She swore it was just that one night, and that she regretted it instantly. Apparently they agreed it was a mistake, and promised never to speak of it again. She insists it was never emotional, just a stupid, drunken fling. I was just staring at her in disbelief as she said all this, feeling like I was listening to someone else's life, not mine. My best friend and my wife, hooking up? It sounded like a bad soap opera plot, and I still half wanted to believe it wasn't true. I hadn't noticed, but I was clenching my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. She went on, saying a few weeks later she found out she was pregnant, and she just knew I was the father, or at least she convinced herself I was. She said she never even considered that it might be Jake's, because that would have destroyed everything. She told me through ugly sobs, "I wanted it to be yours so badly. I was afraid, and I just pushed it out of my mind. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." She must have repeated "I'm sorry" a dozen times. I finally found my voice, and it came out icy and venomous, words I never imagined I'd say to my wife. "That's not good enough." She looked up at me with this broken expression, mascara streaked, eyes red. I'd never spoken to her so coldly. In that moment, I felt like I hated her. I'd never hated anyone like that before. I asked her if she ever would have told me the truth. She shook her head frantically and said, "No, I don't know. I thought it was just one mistake and it was over. I didn't want to ruin what we had. I convinced myself he was yours. And you never questioned it." I laughed bitterly at that. Of course I never questioned it. I had no reason not to trust her, and Ethan looks enough like both of us in different ways that I never suspected. In hindsight, I do see some of Jake's features in him. God, it's so obvious now. It makes me feel like an idiot. There were even jokes within our friend group that Ethan had Jake's smile, or that Jake could be his fun uncle, because of how close they were. And we all just laughed it off. How sick is that? At this point, I was too angry and devastated to even look at her. Our whole marriage was built on a lie. Or at least, it felt that way to me. 10 years of loving my son, thinking he was mine. And she took that from me, with her lie of omission. I stood up, feeling a rush of adrenaline. I couldn't sit still. I started pacing. Inside the house, I could see Ethan peeking from the window, worry on his face. I quickly moved further down the porch, out of his line of sight. Rachel reached out, grabbing my hand as I passed in front of her. "Please," she begged through tears. "We can get through this. You're his father. Biology doesn't matter. You're the one who's been there every day of his life. That's what makes you his dad." Her voice cracked as she tried to smile through her tears. "He loves you so much. You love him. We can still be a family." I yanked my hand away as if her touch burned me. I was furious that she was trying to spin this around as if I should just act like nothing happened. I yelled, probably louder than I should have given. Our son was right inside. "You lied to me for 10 years, Rachel. 10 years. You looked me in the eye. You let me sign that birth certificate. You let me raise him without ever telling me I might not be his father." I realized I was gesturing wildly toward the house, practically shouting. Through the window, I saw Ethan jump back, startled. I lowered my voice, but the anger was still boiling over in each word, a seething whisper. "You took away my choice. I had a right to know. We could have done a paternity test when he was born, but you were too cowardly to tell me what you did." She was sobbing uncontrollably, saying she was scared, and she knew she was wrong, but she was afraid to lose me, and that I have every right to be angry. It was weird. A part of me expected her to get defensive or angry back, but she didn't. She just looked defeated and desperate. I wish I could say I had some eloquent response or sense of resolution at that moment, but I didn't. I was too overwhelmed. I just knew I couldn't stand to be around her right then. So I told her I needed some space to think, and that I'm leaving for now. She panicked at that, grabbing my arm again, crying, "No, please, don't go. We have to talk about this. We have to figure out what to do for Ethan." She was practically hysterical, which only made me grit my teeth. "Now you want to talk about what to do for Ethan? Now, after 10 years? I shook my head in disgust. "I can't even look at you. I need to get out of here." I stormed into the house. Ethan was standing in the hallway, looking frightened and confused. I tried my best to soften my expression for him. I didn't want to drag him into this nightmare. I knelt down, my voice gentle somehow despite the rage and pain inside me, and I told him, "Daddy needs to go on a little trip for work, okay, bud? Just for a couple days." My voice almost cracked, because calling myself Daddy felt suddenly wrong and right at the same time. He's my son in every way that matters, except this way, that apparently matters a lot to me right now. He looked up at me with those big brown eyes, Jake's eyes, a vicious voice in my head noted, and asked if I'd be back for our camping trip this weekend. We had planned a father-son camping trip with some other dads and kids. My heart just broke right there. I forced a smile and lied. "We'll see, buddy. I'm going to try." He hugged me, and I hugged him back fiercely, probably too long because he started squirming and saying, "Daddy, you're squishing me." I released him and grabbed my keys and wallet. Rachel was in the doorway, mascara smeared, silently pleading with her eyes. I brushed past her. As I left, I whispered so Ethan wouldn't hear, "I can't do this right now. I can't." She asked me where I was going, and I just shook my head and muttered, "I don't know." Away. I drove off with no plan, tears streaming down my face. I ended up at a cheap motel on the other side of town, the kind of place we'd never normally stay. I sat on the bed in that stale-smelling room, and finally just broke down completely. I'm not ashamed to admit I cried harder than I ever have in my life. Everything I thought I knew was flipped upside down in a matter of hours. I felt anger, sorrow, betrayal, even a weird sense of guilt. Like, was I a bad husband? Did I drive her to this? But then I'd get angry again, thinking how she could have told me the truth at any point, but chose not to. I didn't sleep at all that night. I alternated between staring at the ceiling and checking my phone. There were dozens of texts from Rachel. At first they were frantic apologies and pleas for me to come back, saying we need to talk more. Then they became worried, asking if I was safe. Then back to apologizing and begging me not to do anything rash. I didn't respond to any of them. I haven't responded, and I haven't gone back home. It's been one hellish day. I called in sick to work and just sat in this dingy room, ignoring calls from everyone. I feel paralyzed by indecision and pain. I love my son. Or, I guess, our son. Her son? I don't even know what to call him right now in my head. Ethan is my whole world. But every time I think of his face, I also see Jake and Rachel in my mind from 10 years ago, sneaking behind my back, laughing at me for being oblivious. I know that's not what literally happened, but my imagination is cruel and keeps playing scenes that destroy me. And speaking of Jake, I haven't even begun to process that part. My best friend betrayed me too. We've known each other since we were 18. He was the best man at my wedding. He's Uncle Jake to Ethan, the guy who comes to our barbecues, who remembers every one of my kids' birthdays. How do you do that to your friend? Did our whole friendship mean nothing to him either? I'm feeling so many things at once. Grief over the loss of the family I thought I had, anger and deep hatred toward the two people I trusted most, and fear for what this means for the future. I don't know what I'm going to do about my marriage or even about Ethan. Part of me wants to run back home and hug my boy and never let go, pretend none of this happened, because he's innocent in all this. He didn't ask for any of this. He doesn't deserve to have his life blown up either. But I can't just pretend. I can't unknow the truth. Another part of me wants to burn it all down, file for divorce immediately, sue for full custody out of spite, though if he's not biologically mine, would I even have that right? And make Rachel and Jake hurt as much as I'm hurting. That impulse scares me, because I've never been a vindictive person. But right now, the rage is white hot, and it frightens me. I haven't talked to anyone in my real life yet. I haven't even told my parents or siblings what's going on. I feel too ashamed and too shattered to explain it. That's why I'm writing this. Because I had to tell someone, even if it's just strangers on the internet. My life as I knew it is over, and I honestly have no idea how to handle what comes next. All I know is that I can't stay in that house with her right now. I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back to her. She was my world, and she lied to me in the most profound way. And my son, God, I still can't even wrap my head around what this means for him, for us. I don't think I can bring myself to tell him. How could I look into his sweet face and say, I'm not your real dad? The thought alone brings me to tears again. For now, I'm just sitting here in this crappy motel, the DNA report on the nightstand like some kind of ghost haunting me, typing all this out because I feel like I'm going to explode from heartbreak. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I can do. There's no way to put this shattered family back together the way it was. No matter what I decide, nothing will ever be the same. And the worst part? Tomorrow I'll wake up and have to feel this all over again. And know it wasn't just a nightmare. This is my reality now. Update 1. It's been a week since I found out the truth, and if I thought clarity would come with time, I was very wrong. I'm exhausted, emotionally and physically. I ended up staying at my older brother's apartment after a couple of nights in that motel. I finally told him everything, and watching his face shift from confusion to rage to pity as he listened was like confirming that yes, this is all really happening. He wanted to drive straight to Rachel and give her a piece of his mind, but I begged him not to. Instead, he's been a rock for me, making sure I eat something and sleep at least a couple hours here and there. After a week of avoiding both my wife and Jake, I knew I couldn't hide forever. I missed my son terribly. I've been video calling Ethan each night before his bedtime, trying to act cheerful for his sake. It's mostly been brief, since I tell him I'm away for work. Hearing his small voice say, "Good night, Daddy, I love you," through the phone just about guts me every time. I usually end the call and then just sit there in the dark, feeling like the worst person in the world for not being there with him. Rachel hovers somewhere off camera during these calls. I can sense her presence even though she doesn't show her face. She hasn't pushed me to come home during these calls. She just makes sure Ethan gets to talk to me. It's like we have an unspoken truce to keep things as normal as possible for him, at least at bedtime. But outside of those calls, Rachel has been bombarding me with messages about how sorry she is, and asking to meet in person to talk. I've mostly ignored them or replied very minimally. I'm not ready to face her. Instead, I decided I needed to confront the other person who blew up my world, Jake. 2 days ago, I met Jake at a quiet park we all used to hang out at in college. As soon as he saw my face, he knew something serious was up. I told him point blank that I knew about him and Rachel. He froze, then actually started crying and apologizing, saying it was the biggest mistake of his life. I was shaking with anger. I'll admit I threw a punch one hard hit to his jaw, and he didn't fight back at all. He stood there and took it, staggering and holding his face. He kept saying he never wanted to hurt me, that he never knew Rachel became pregnant from that one night. From the shock and guilt on his face, I believe he really didn't know. When he realized that Ethan isn't biologically mine, he looked absolutely crushed. He stammered, "Oh God, I have a son?" and sobbed harder. I saw red. I told him in no uncertain terms to back the hell off. I said something like, "You've done enough. Don't you even think about coming near him. He's my son, do you hear me? Mine." I realized the irony. I was yelling at his biological father to stay away from my son, but in that moment I didn't care whose DNA he had. Ethan is my boy. I'm the one who raised him, and this betrayal isn't going to be his burden. Jake put his hands up, trying to calm me down. He swore he wasn't trying to take Ethan away or anything, but that he felt responsible and wanted to support him if I was going to step back. He actually said that. If you're going to step back. Like he expected I might abandon my son, and he'd swoop in. I told him to go to hell for even entertaining the thought. I haven't made any decisions about anything yet, but as far as I'm concerned right now, he has no part in Ethan's life, and never will. Jake nodded through tears and said he'd respect my wishes, that he'd wait to hear from me if I ever want to involve him. He asked me to please keep him updated, and that he'd stay away until I figured out what I want to do. The whole conversation felt surreal. Here I was, basically negotiating with the man who betrayed me about the child he unknowingly fathered. Before we parted, I told him one thing clearly. If he ever considered me a friend, or if he cares about Ethan's well-being, he will not contact Rachel or Ethan at all right now. Any communication needs to go through me, he readily agreed. Honestly, he looked so guilt-ridden and destroyed, I doubt he'll do anything to rock the boat. He did quietly ask me to tell Ethan that Uncle Jake loves him. I just glared and said nothing to that. We left it at that. He walked off sobbing, and I drove away with my brother, who had come with me for support and witnessed the whole thing from a distance. Confronting Jake was simultaneously satisfying and devastating. On one hand, I got to release some of the rage I had built up. On the other hand, seeing him crumble and knowing that this mess extends beyond just my immediate family, it just made everything more complicated. Now I have to think about what's actually best for Ethan in the long run. Is it better for him to never know and have me continue as his father, assuming I can emotionally manage that? Or will this secret blow up later anyway and hurt him even more? And do I even have the strength to be the dad he deserves after all this? Or will I forever look at him and see betrayal? Legally, things are tangled too. I met with a divorce attorney. He laid out my options and none of them feel great. If I divorce Rachel, which I'm pretty set on at this point, I'm still considered Ethan's legal father since we were married when he was born and I'm on the birth certificate. I could fight to disestablish paternity so I'm not held responsible, but that might sever any rights I have to see Ethan. Alternatively, I could pursue custody. As I normally would, my child courts here might not even consider biology since I've been his dad his whole life. The idea of a courtroom drama where a judge hears how my wife cheated and then decides custody between me, the non-bio dad, and her, the cheating bio mom. It's a nightmare scenario I never imagined I'd be facing. The lawyer also mentioned that if I disestablish paternity, the state might go after the biological father for child support. That would out Jake as the father officially, something Rachel clearly never wants. I haven't told the lawyer who the bio father is, I just said I know I'm not the father. I haven't even begun to discuss any of this with Rachel. In fact, I've barely spoken to her except via a few texts about logistics. Like she asked if she should send over more of my clothes with my brother, and I said yes. She's giving me space because I think she knows I'm dead serious about needing time. From what my brother tells me, he stopped by the house to get my things. She looks like a wreck. Apparently, she was in pajamas at 3 p.m., eyes red and swollen like she's been crying for days. I'd be lying if I said that didn't give me a little grim satisfaction. She should feel some of the pain she's caused. But a small part of me, the part that still stupidly cares about her, is also sad to hear she's in such bad shape. Most importantly, My brother said Ethan seemed okay, but quieter than usual. He was playing with his action figures in the living room, and when my brother went to get my suitcase from the bedroom, Ethan asked him, "Is my daddy okay?" That broke my heart. My brother just told him I was fine and just needed to work. Ethan apparently nodded and went back to playing, but I hate that he's worrying even a little. He's a sensitive kid. He definitely senses something is wrong between me and his mom. I'm torn in a million directions. The only thing I know for sure is that I can't go back to the way things were. I will never trust Rachel again, and I doubt I'll ever be able to be her husband in any real sense after this. The marriage is basically dead in my heart, and I've started the process of filing for divorce. I haven't told her that outright yet, but I think she knows it's coming. As for my son, I haven't made a final decision. Right now, I'm still talking to him every day, and I plan to see him in person soon. I can't stand being away much longer. I might go back home in a few days, not to reconcile, but for Ethan. Maybe I'll sleep in the guest room and just be there so he doesn't feel abandoned by me on top of everything. The thought of living under the same roof as Rachel after all this makes my skin crawl, but I can put up with it short term if it helps Ethan feel secure. I'm gonna set some ground rules with her if I do that. Like, this isn't forgiveness or anything, it's just about parenting. Honestly, I never imagined my life would become this complicated and broken. A week ago, I was just a regular guy with a happy family, or so I thought. Now everything is a mess of lawyers and DNA tests and shattered trust. I appreciate everyone who reached out with advice and support. It helps to know I'm not alone, even though I feel like I'm on an island right now. I wish I had a more hopeful update. I'm doing what I can, taking it day by day. My main focus is my son and what's best for him, even if it costs me. I'll update again if anything major happens, but for now I'm in survival mode, trying to hold it together for Ethan. This still doesn't feel real most days. Update 2. It's been over a month now. This will probably be my final update, because in all honesty, I don't know where things go from here. The situation hit a new breaking point, and I'm still reeling. After spending a couple more weeks at my brother's, I couldn't stay away from Ethan any longer. I ended up moving back home, but not as a husband returning. More like a roommate focused solely on our child. I've been sleeping in the guest room. Rachel and I keep our interactions brief and civil, only discussing Ethan's needs or household logistics. Living under the same roof yet feeling like strangers, or worse, has been its own special kind of torture. But at least I'm there for my boy. He was so happy when I came home. He clung to me the first night like he thought I might vanish again. It broke and warmed my heart all at once. I reassured him repeatedly that I'm not going anywhere, that I love him. The relief in his eyes was painful to see. For a while, Rachel and I maintained a tense status quo. We were cordial in front of Ethan, even ate dinner together as a family a few times in awkward silence, pretending for his sake. He clearly sensed things were off, but seemed to accept the "mommy and daddy have some grown-up problems" line we gave him. I thought maybe we could keep this up until I sorted out divorce and custody details. It was agony for me emotionally, but I'd do anything for my son. Unfortunately, that fragile peace didn't last. A few nights ago, Rachel and I got into a heated argument after Ethan went to bed. It started with a practical discussion about the upcoming holidays, who would go where, which spiraled into a fight about everything else. All the unresolved feelings came pouring out. She was upset that I was proceeding with divorce, seemingly without any willingness to talk it through, as if there was anything to talk about. Her choices blew up our marriage. I was upset that she seemed to expect we could somehow just continue this charade indefinitely. The anger that I'd been bottling up came out. I raised my voice, she raised hers, and we said a lot of harsh things. She cried that she knows she destroyed my trust, but that I'm abandoning both her and Ethan by refusing to try to work through it. That set me off. I told her I would never abandon Ethan, but I sure as hell am abandoning her. I spat out that she killed whatever love I had for her the day she told me the truth. She was shaking and said she didn't want a divorce, that she'd do anything to fix this. She even suggested for the first time, involving Jake, like having him sign away rights or something formally, or even some kind of mediated conversation between the three of us. The mention of his name in our house made me furious. I practically yelled, "I don't want his name spoken in this house again!" That's when I heard a small voice from the hallway. "Daddy?" My heart sank to my feet. Ethan was standing there in his pajamas, his eyes huge and frightened. We both immediately fell silent. I don't know how much he heard, but clearly enough. I tried to smile and said softly, "Hey buddy, what are you doing up? It's late." He didn't smile back. He was trembling. He asked in a tiny voice, "Are you and Mommy going to break up?" Rachel started sobbing on the spot, which of course only scared him more. I shot her a look to get it together, and I managed to steady my voice. I told him, "Mommy and Daddy are. We're trying to work through a big problem." But no matter what happens, we both love you so much, that will never change, okay? He just looked at me, and then asked, "Do you not love Mommy anymore?" Out of the mouths of babes, huh? I carefully replied, "I care about Mommy, but I'm very upset with her. It's something between us, and it's not your fault at all." He hesitated, and then, eyes brimming with tears, hit me with, "Is it because I'm not really your son?" Rachel and I both froze. It felt like the air was sucked out of the room. I had never said those words in front of him. We hadn't planned to address that until much, much later, or possibly never. I have no idea how he picked that up. Maybe he overheard one of our earlier fights or snippets of my conversations with my brother. Maybe our recent argument included something about real father or biology, I don't even remember. But he knew, at least in part. I immediately went to him and said, "Ethan, listen to me." My voice was shaking. "I am your dad. I have been since the day you were born, and I always will be, no matter what. Nothing will ever change that, okay? You are my son." I was choking up, trying so hard not to fall apart. He was full-on crying now. "But is Uncle Jake my dad?" he asked, words tumbling out between sobs. I felt like I might vomit. Rachel was wailing behind me, saying, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," over and over through her tears. This was the exact nightmare scenario I didn't want for my kid. I held Ethan close, and I told him the simplest truth I could. "Uncle Jake, he is your biological father. That means you have some of his DNA, like how some kids look like their aunts or uncles. But being a dad is so much more than DNA. I'm your dad. I'm the one who takes care of you and loves you every day. That's never going to change." I was crying by then, too. He pulled back and looked at me with the saddest expression I've ever seen. "Promise?" he whispered. I swear my heart shattered into a million pieces right there. "I promise," I told him, voice fierce through my tears. "I'm your dad, and I'm not going anywhere. I love you more than anything." He nodded and clung to me, and I carried him back to his room. I sat with him until he cried himself to sleep in my arms. I felt his little heart pounding against mine. It gradually slowed as he calmed down, eventually drifting into exhausted sleep. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark holding him, long after he'd fallen asleep. I felt absolutely wrecked. For him, for me, for the family that was no more. I eventually laid him down gently, kissed his forehead, and left his room. Rachel was waiting outside the door, eyes swollen. We didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. She reached for my hand and I pulled away. I went to the guest room and shut the door. The next day, I told Rachel I wanted her to stay at her parents' for a while. This was originally our house, but I'm not leaving Ethan's home and routine, especially now. She agreed without a fight. I think after seeing the pain on Ethan's face, she finally understood that she caused something that can't be undone. She packed some bags and is now living with her parents across town. She can see Ethan whenever he wants, of course. I'm not going to stand in the way of that. But I've taken a leave from work and I'm with him constantly right now, because he's very fragile. In the days since, Ethan has been quieter, more clinging. He asked me a few more questions, like, "Did you know I wasn't your real son?" And, "Are you mad at me?" That one truly gutted me. I've been reassuring him in every way I know how that none of this is his fault and that I want to be his dad forever, because I do. I've decided firmly that whatever happens with Rachel, I am never walking away from Ethan. Biology be damned, he's my son. If that means fighting tooth and nail in court to remain his legal father, I'll do it. Thankfully, Rachel has not opposed me on this. In fact, she told me, through a text, that she understands I'm his father in every way that counts, and she would never try to cut me out. If that's true, then at least we're on the same page there. We haven't spoken about anything else. All our communication is about Ethan's schedule, or exchanging brief updates about him. We're like co-parents who barely know each other, which I guess is exactly what we are now. The divorce paperwork is in motion. There's really no way back from this. I think the moment Ethan learned the truth, any hypothetical chance of reconciliation between me and Rachel evaporated. Not that I was considering it before, but now it's just ashes. Jake, for what it's worth, has respected my demand to stay away. He sent me one email after the news clearly reached him. I suspect Rachel told her parents, who told others. Anyway, the cat's out of the bag. The email was short. He said he was sorry for everything and that he would follow my lead regarding if/when Ethan wants or needs to talk to him someday. I haven't replied. Honestly, I don't know if I'll ever want Jake involved. Part of me wants to cut him out forever. But another part of me, thinking of Ethan down the line, wonders if that's selfish. Ethan might very well resent me one day if I keep his biological father from him completely. I can't deal with that decision right now. Ethan's only 10. I have a few years before it likely becomes a pressing issue. So here I am, a single dad, because that's what I am in practice now, with a traumatized kid, an estranged wife, and a former best friend who is the biological father of my child. This is the stuff you think only happens on TV talk shows, yet it's my life. We've gotten Ethan into therapy with a child psychologist who specializes in family trauma. I'm attending sessions too to learn how to support him. It's early, but so far the therapist says Ethan is processing things as well as can be expected. He's confused and sad, but he still very clearly sees me as daddy, and that's a bond that doesn't break easily. I pray that remains true. As for me, I'm numb. The initial adrenaline of anger has faded, and now I mostly feel hollow and exhausted. I'm 37 years old and about to be divorced, sharing custody of a child that biologically isn't mine. Navigating co-parenting with a woman I once planned to grow old with but now can barely look in the eye. It's a lot to wrap my head around. I'm also grieving, I guess. Grieving the loss of the family I thought I had. Grieving the trust and love I had for Rachel. Even in a weird way, grieving the friendship I had with Jake for 20 years. All of that has been smashed to pieces. People have asked me, here and in real life, what I plan to do about Ethan knowing Jake. The truth is, I don't have a definitive plan. Right now, I'm focusing on making sure Ethan feels safe and loved. I told him he can ask me anything, anytime, and I'll always tell him the truth from now on. That's a promise I will never break. If down the road he wants to know more about Jake, or even meet him, I won't forbid it. But it will be on Ethan's terms, when he's ready, if ever. Jake had his chance to be a father and he didn't even know it. I've been dad for a decade and I'm not going to suddenly yank that away or confuse my son with new dad right now. Rachel has been surprisingly deferential in all this. I think she's just ridden with guilt and finally putting Ethan first. She agreed that we will say nothing more to him about Jake or the past, unless it comes from Ethan's questions. For now, Uncle Jake remains just that in Ethan's world, a friend of the family who moved away. I doubt Ethan will want to see him anytime soon, fortunately. I realize this isn't a satisfying, neatly wrapped ending. There's no real resolution, just a lot of broken pieces that we're trying to make the best of. My marriage is over. My friendship is over. My relationship with my son is forever altered. But I am determined to keep it as strong as possible. In the end, that's the only thing that truly matters to me. If I have any takeaway to offer, it's this. Secrets have a way of coming out, and when they do, they can destroy lives. I wish Rachel had been honest from the start. Maybe we wouldn't be in this place. Or hell, I wish I never took that DNA test at all. Ignorance would have been bliss, perhaps. But that genie can't go back in the bottle.